Alright, so this week in the shop, this 240's in for a full vinyl wrap. I would say color change, but this thing's already like 5 different colors, and we're going to make it one color. Color we're going with is Millennium Jade. It's a brand new color from Tech Wrap. This might be actually one of the first proper cars to be receiving this roll from Tech Wrap. Color's really nice. It's on the lighter side of Millennium Jade, and I actually prefer this shade over the other ones that some of these other guys are offering. So I do think this is going to look pretty good with the wheels and just the setup of the car overall. I think the kit is going to emphasize the color. You've got a lot of body lines to work with, and with us approaching this with the vinyl wrap, there's going to be a lot of inlays, especially on the front and rear bumpers. That's probably where I'm going to have the most time. Like any project, we're going to go ahead and start with the front clip. I like to get the hood, fenders, bumper, and headlights down in this case, and then move on to the rest of the car. So without further ado, let's get straight to it. Alrighty, so we've got the hood and fenders laid, and it's going relatively smooth. It's not terrible. It's a little involved, especially on the fenders. I damn near had a whole day in just the fenders alone, solely because there's just so many inlays. You've got a lot of right angle turns, and honestly, every time you have a right angle turn, it's best to just put an inlay in those areas. For example, on this fender, we've got an inlay in here. This little crease down here, we have an inlay. It's inlay city all up in these vents here, and as well right up below. That took a little time to actually get right and line up the body lines to try and hide the seams really well. But we got them down, and then you come back and then lay the face overall. The color itself is looking amazing. This is probably the closest I've seen to the real Millennium Jade. I love it. In here, it's a little more silver than it will be outside because of our white and blue light. But I'm excited to actually see what it looks like outside. Because also in here, you see all the imperfections. And that leads me into my next thing. This kit is essentially just, how they got it, bare fiberglass or what have you. So the finish is not going to be consistent by any means. I clay bar every panel that I do, and the abrasiveness of that does a decent job at smoothing it out. But I can't do anything about actually sanding it down. If I sand this down any further, physically, it'll actually make the adhesion of the vinyl a lot less. And I've had a little bit of trouble with the adhesion on this stuff. In very, very sharp, tight turns, it had a little bit of trouble adhering down in here. And then in a couple spots, it actually had a little bit of trouble adhering down even with the air regress. So a lot of post heating had to be done to really make sure this is seated, sealed, and set in. Regardless, we're gonna keep chugging along. Today we're gonna attack this crazy front bumper. I'm gonna have inlays all up in the fog light areas, the side marker areas. And when I come back around, I'll probably put a couple inlays down by the headlights, and then we're going to come back around and lay the entire face today. And then I'm hoping I'd have some scrap to do the headlights, so that way by the end of the day, the whole front clip is done, buttoned back up, and we can move on to the rest of the car. This vinyl wrap is directional, so I do have to install it a certain direction on every panel. The application process is a little different than it would be on other films that are not directional, so when we go to cut this stuff, we have to cut it lengthwise and then trim it out, as we move along per panel. Every panel, the film faces the same direction so that everything matches. It's so important, so important. I see a lot of people even today, wrap shops and guys doing it at home. They forget about this or they don't do it right. And so they'll apply the fender differently than they would the door, because the door you'll do it running the film all the way down the side. And whereas the fender, you could do it just running the film up and down, because the 60-inch roll is plenty wide enough for a fender. You just run out the length of the height. And people do it that way. Well, if you do it that way, then you get mismatched panels, and we can't do it that way. Fortunately enough, this is a small enough car that we're able to run it lengthwise and save so much on material, because the fender is not taller than 30 inches, if I remember correctly. So I cut the length of this, cut it straight down the middle, 30 inches, and applied it. And we did the same thing for the doors, same thing for the quarter panels. So yeah. Without further ado, let's get this bumper done, get this thing buttoned back up, and carry on. so it is the following morning since doing the front bumper. We are essentially going to finish up the front clip today and move on to the rest of the vehicle. Today I'm going to come back and actually refine my installation on this bumper. These body kits are very demanding for any vinyl, let alone a calendared film like this one. We went with the calendared film because they're thicker, a little more durable than your cast materials, as well as having a almost paint-like finish compared to your cast materials. 3M's high gloss stuff is actually looking pretty good, and they're getting better, but their glue lining is very bad. But I'm still learning that material, and they only have a very limited amount of colors. This guy wanted a Millennium Jade, and Tech Wrap actually makes a color that's so close to Millennium Jade. It's going to be hard to actually show this through the camera, the true tone of this color, but in person, it's honestly probably the closest shade I've seen to the true color. Anyway, with that out of the way, this front bumper, you know, I expected everything that was going to happened, in the sense that, again, it is very demanding. So that's okay, we just have to come back now and refine our installation for that demand. So, for example, for me to actually turn this corner here, you would have to have so much horizontal stretch that you would actually risk decoloring the material because of how thin you're stretching it. You would need so much pull and so much tension around this bend here because it's such a tight and sharp turn that then you have to lay over. You would have so much tension and pull here that it would actually discolor the material and potentially lead to premature failure, among other issues. So, when I stretched this material horizontally across both ways, I did it just enough to, you know, for it to want to hug around the body lines. And of course, I expected there to be excess material in this corner, which there was. So what we're going to do this morning is we're going to come back now and actually post-heat all of our edges and make sure that's all secured and locked, trim anything back that we need to. And then we're also going to come up here and put an overlay right on this body line here. So we are going to do the whole thing green. So I'm going to actually trim out on this body line somewhere and put an overlay of this color on top. Because again, it'll seem better with an overlay because the seam's facing down from you. At the same time, this is just too much for the film. I would rather keep the color and keep a nicer finish, and I would rather have a much longer, more durable, good-looking install and deal with a seam rather than stretch the shit out of it, potentially discolor it, and then run into premature pullback from this because of how much tension you have to have. We have to go in as opposed to going over, so this is different than like something like a Dodge Charger or Challenger where you have that bumper corner that you're wrapping over. This is sunken down and in, and because of that, you run into a lot of excess material unless you pull the crap out of this thing, which again, I don't want to do. So we're going to put this overlay on, post-heat our edges, just verify everything. I have a little bit of excess material now to do these headlights, and then we're going to post-heat all the edges on all of the panels once more just to verify that's all good to go, and then we're going to move on to the rest of the car. I'm going to do the doors next, and then the side skirts, and then I believe I'm going to work on the quarter panels and then the rear back of the car. Without further ado, let's keep this ball rolling. I'm loving this color. The material is gorgeous. The color is gorgeous. Like, this is such a clean color, especially with these wheels. It's coming along nicely. We are going to do our trim out and get going. So, yeah, let's keep it rolling.